as of course we usually do, we'll be doing the review of round 24. Now, I used to try to get these out a day earlier, but I was a bit tired because I had my wedding on Saturday. So, nonetheless, we started with Friday night footy, which was Essendon versus Collingwood, and Essendon just to fall into that hole.
They just played like they didn't
care.
They knew they were done. They just didn't care.
Yeah.
And they played like that for most of the second half of the season, to be honest.
Yeah. Now, you were the one who gave the votes for this game, so your votes were 3 votes to Jordan De Goey, 2 votes to Jack Ginnivan, and the 1 vote to Tom Mitchell. Do you want to explain your votes?
Yeah, it's, to begin with, De Goey with the 3, like, he just dominated the first, pretty much most of the match. Pretty much the first 3 quarters he dominated out the middle, and he just did everything, really. Besides, with Ginnivan, it's sad because I think with all the inclusions that they may get back in the first week of finals, he may not even be in the best 22. He might be the sub in that first qualifying final, which is maybe a bit unlucky, but he played really well and he seems to get the form back that he had last year. Yeah, he had last year. And Tom Mitchell, he got the 1 vote. He did get a lot of centre clearances in that match, and he may not have, and he had a lot of disposals as well, which was pretty good in his match.
He did hit quite a wall throughout the mid-season and has been subbed a few times for Collingwood. It will be interesting to see with those inclusions coming back if he still holds his spot in the lineup or he possibly gets pushed out, maybe end up as a sub in that first final.
Well, they're saying that Nick Dacos is 50-50 to play the first final, so that'll be an interesting one. I think it's his spot that it's up for grabs
at this stage.
For Tom Mitchell, though, yeah.
After that, we get to one of the dead rubbers of round 24, which was Hawthorn versus Fremantle in Melbourne at the MCG. And it was Fremantle who came out on top by 37 points. Again, you gave the votes here. So the 3 votes went to Caleb Sarong, 2 votes to Andrew Brayshaw, and the 1 vote to Dylan Moore. So, pretty dead rubber in the end for both sides. Obviously, not much could be done. Maybe a couple of ladder positions up and down, but again, really wasn't much on the line for both teams. But I think Fremantle are one of the teams next season who can definitely bounce back.
Yeah.
And I guess it is good to see them end the season on a high. And I think
travelling to Melbourne and getting that win is just some more experience there, really.
Yeah. So after that, we get to another dead rubber, but it was North Melbourne who finally broke their losing streak of 21 games in a row to drop their number 1 draft pick.
Yeah,
but I mean, it is good to see them actually go out and perform well and not just play for the draft pick, I guess.
You can see Clarkson during the week, though, during the press conferences, he was ropeable about how the Gold Coast were getting concession picks, really, academy picks that the North Melbourne were never getting a priority pick, so they were always going to respond, I thought.
Yeah, I think it is kind of crap as well that's happened. And also, when we think about those couple of drafts that North Melbourne have been right down the ladder with their number 1 picks,
they've given it up.
They've had to either lose them or they've lost their players because of things like Nick Dacos, who went to Collingwood, obviously as a father's son. We obviously had as well Aaron Cadman. Well, no, sorry. Luke Davies Jr. Ugle Hagen, my God, moron. Ugle Hagen obviously got picked up by the Bulldogs as a as an academy player.
Yeah.
So they have lost a few of their first round number 1 draft picks, and also Jameson Horne-Francis, who obviously left.
Yeah, but you got to also think that they also traded pick 1 last year for the generational forward that everyone thinks Aaron Cadman's going to be, and they gave up for another midfielder, which they've got plenty of. So I think I still believe they still stuff that.
And they still had a chance as well a couple of years ago when Logan McDonald was getting picked up by the Sydney Swans. Yeah. They had a chance to pick him up, but they decided to get Will Phillips. And Will Phillips has came along a little bit this year, but I think Logan McDonald is definitely going to be a very good forward for the Sydney Swans.
They have the forward in Larkey, which we will
get to his performance in a second.
Yeah, but he needs a partner, and he just doesn't have that. And he's got Zerha, who's been injured all season, and
isn't a key forward either.
He's not a key forward. He's
at best.
Yeah, exactly. So,
which is nothing against him, but obviously he's not big enough and tall enough to be a key position forward.
Yeah.
But anyway, Nick Larkey was massive on this game. Kicked 9 goals against a very good defence in the Gold Coast. Probably their best line in my opinion.
Yeah.
Very underrated defence, and he was able to kick 9 goals. I mean, I guess you can say the Gold Coast didn't have much to play for here. they're obviously thinking about next season with Damien Hardwick. So this was kind of a dead rubber for them. Going down to Tasmania, they probably weren't really going down there for much other than just a little bit of pride, which they would kind of let go. They kind of just let North Melbourne run away with this one. But with Nick Larkey getting 9 goals, it does beg the question if he's been one of probably the best performing forward of the year, because not taking away too much from Taylor Walker and Charlie Curnow, because they both have been very good this year, and I think they both deserve to take the 2 All-Australian full forward and centre-half forward spots. But Nick Larkey hasn't had the luxury of having a team that will get the ball to him cleanly.
Yeah.
Have not had the luxury of playing. It's the likes of West Coast. Well, sorry, they have had the likes of playing West Coast twice. They haven't had the luxury of having 2 and sometimes even 3 defenders standing in front of him. To still kick 70 goals is a massive achievement for him, and I am actually quite surprised that not one of these clubs in the AFL have not offered him the bank.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised that has not happened, because he is going to be one of the, in a couple more years. If North Melbourne, if he was in a better team right now, he would be winning the Coleman Medal. And if we take a look at the statistics, which I think even you told me, that Nick Larkey would have won the Brownlow Medal, the Coleman Medal, if West Coast and West Coast games were taken out of
and North Melbourne games.
And North Melbourne games were taken out of the equation for goals. So, and it's also tough on Nick Larkey that he wasn't able to play against North Melbourne to get a couple of goals on the board for him. But yeah, that's pretty unlucky for him. Obviously, you've given him the 3 votes. 2 votes went to Taron Thomas, and the 1 vote went to Bailey Scott.
Yeah,
Bailey Scott. Yeah, so
he's actually had a very underrated year off the half forward wing. So with the amount of good wingmen that they've already been this season, Bailey Scott's, I think, played a really good season for North Melbourne.
Yeah. So good on him, and I think Nick Larkey, I think he's probably been one of them up there. I will be interested to see if he does get a spot in that All-Australian 22. He'll probably get in the 44. 40. Oh, they did 44 last year.
Oh, well.
Yeah, but I think he very well could get in there. It's just a little bit unfortunate that I will say that Charlie Curnow, he deserves it. He got the most amount of goals, but you can also see the fact that Taylor Walker and Charlie Curnow got 19 goals against them in the 2 games they had this year. So
is it really fair?
Well, I mean, you take the time and you get it. I mean, there have been some teams who haven't been able to convert it against West Coast, like Essendon, St Kilda as well. So, there are some teams who did have that opportunity and didn't take it. But I guess they did, and they've got to take them when they're at their strongest. So, nonetheless, North Melbourne were able to beat Gold Coast pretty convincingly in the end, and were able to finish their season on a high. And for North Melbourne fans out there, hopefully Alistair Clarkson has a full pre-season, full year with this group, and maybe can bring them up a ladder a little bit. Although I don't see it. But anyway, after that we get to one of the big games of round 24, which was Brisbane versus St Kilda. Brisbane were wayward throughout most of the afternoon, kicking 9 goals, 18, but were able to hold on against pretty good St Kilda lineup without Max King. They won by 12 points in the end, which were the 12 behinds they got in. The 12 extra scoring shots and 12 behinds they got against St Kilda. The votes went to Rowan Marshall with the 3 votes, Jared Berry with the 2, and Dane Zorko with the 1. So good to see Rowan Marshall getting 3 votes once again, and I think he should definitely be talked about now, especially as the All-Australian ruckman.
I think he is. I think he should be, because let's be honest, Tim English, he started well, but he's not been that great since all the Bulldogs players have been.
Yeah, basically since I think Bontempelli has carried them over the line for a lot of games in the second half of the year, and Tim English has definitely dropped off the face of the earth. And I think Rowan Marshall throughout the whole entire season has been the best ruckman. I think maybe they probably both get in there at this stage. Maybe one goes ruck, one goes interchange, which I think will happen. And I think Rowan Marshall's just had a massive year for St Kilda.
If you look at the stats, Rowan Marshall has, I think, had the 3rd most disposals by a ruckman in the last, I think it was decade, maybe 2 decades, but
I think he was definitely in the top 5, because there was Max Gawn.
He was 3rd. He was definitely 3rd. I remember that because.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I remember that. I think I remember seeing that where Brodie Grundy and Max Gawn were up in the top 2, and Dean Cox was down. I think 4th or 5th in there. So I think
he's got the stats behind him.
And he held that record, Dean Cox, for many, many years before basically the evolution of the ruckman came along. But nonetheless, Brisbane did well to win this game. I did watch a snippet of it. for a bit and did listen to it on the radio for a little bit as well. And Brisbane did do very well to hold on in this game and just able to get in front in the end. And now they do host a home final, which is definitely what they need.
Yeah.
Because going down to Adelaide Oval in the first final would be pretty catastrophic. I don't think they could win from there. But playing at home, they've got all the advantages and are huge favourites in that one. After that, though, we get to a dead rubber for the Cats, but the Bulldogs had everything to play for, and they were able to get over the line. What I will say, though, is Geelong rested a lot of players for this game.
Geelong they played their second-rate team.
They didn't have any key... Tom Hawkins and Jeremy Cameron did not play in this one.
Yeah.
There was definitely farewelling a few champion players of the game. One of them was Isaac Smith, who was massive in this one. Had a very good game for Geelong, but has decided to retire. The Bulldogs did very well to win this one. But again, I think we said it last week, we've said it throughout a lot of the last 6 weeks, that the Bulldogs are such a response team that we're not so surprised that they came out and performed well. And against the second-rate Geelong side, we're not really too surprised by this result in the end, to be honest. And the Bulldogs were able to run away with 25-point winners. So the votes went to, in the end, the 3 votes went to Treloar, 2 votes to Isaac Smith, and the 1 vote to Tom Liberatore. Marcus Bontempelli missed out on votes here, which is very interesting because he is right up there with the Boundary Riders medal votes, which I will probably find a date early next week, if not on the weekend, to do a live stream of all the votes for the whole season. I'll see if I can do it when you're here as well, because I kind of want to do it with you here as well. Although on the weekend, maybe the best time. We'll see how we go. I will be mentioning it over our socials, which are on the screen, as you guys can see. But well done here. Marcus Bontempelli missing out on some votes.
He was close. He was definitely close. But I think Liberatore's game in the midfield, he did get a lot of clearances and he did do a lot around the ground. And cost him the first Ryder medal, but
the inaugural Ryder medal. I mean, this could be huge for his career.
Yeah,
I mean, he'll be ruined the day he missed out on this. Anyway, after that, we get to another dead rubber. I know I keep on saying that. I'm sorry, but West Coast versus the Crows. And to West Coast credit, they were there with the Crows for 3 quarters.
Yeah.
But in the end, the Crows were able to run away winners. And to be honest, they did have, 38 scoring shots to 18. So they very well should have won this game, the Crows.
But
in the end of the day, Taylor Walker came along as well and nailed the 9 goals, which got him over the line, especially in that last quarter.
Yeah.
Look, I know a lot of things said about Jeremy McGovern playing on him and played him very poorly, and I'm going to agree with that. But on the other hand, I do think that Jeremy McGovern is not a key position back.
No, he's
not. I'm not surprised that Taylor Walker was able to have a field day on him. But I think you got to be there and you got to play well to kick 9 goals no matter what. And it just proves that West Coast are in such a huge hole. And yes, they beat the Western Bulldogs the week before, but it's not. I don't think it's patching over any sort of wounds or cracks in the wall at all when they win one game against a team who didn't even show up. So in the Bulldogs last week. So West Coast have got so many questions to answer. I don't think Adam Simpson should survive this. Look, I know it's not all his fault, but I think a lot of things need to change at the club, and they can't just continue this cycle because this has been going on for years, and it continued on Saturday night with a pretty big drubbing in the end, despite only losing by 45 points. And again, we shouldn't be saying that a team only losing by 45 points is like a good thing. Yeah. So anyway, the Crows run away with a win. Obviously, they would be probably sitting in the 8 right now if the Ben Keys goal was allowed. Although we don't really know how that final 40 odd seconds would have gone if Ben Keys' goal wasn't allowed. They would have just scraped into 8th spot, I believe, the Crows. Yeah. But anyway, to this game in question, the 3 votes obviously went to Taylor Walker with the 9 goals. 2 votes went to Rory Laird, and Josh Rochelle got the 1 vote. After that, we get to the first game on Sunday afternoon, which was Port Adelaide versus Richmond. Good game from Port Adelaide in the end. We were able to pull away in the last quarter to keep Richmond at bay. I was actually really impressed by Richmond's performance because I thought they were just going to come to Adelaide Oval and kind of put the cue in the rack for the season, with last week against North Melbourne really being the farewell game to their champions in Cochin and Riewoldt. So it was good to see Richmond really stand up in this game, but in the end, the better side ran away in the last quarter. With the votes quickly, you did give these, and I will ask you about them in a minute. But the 3 votes went to Connor Rozee, 2 votes to Zach Butters, and the 1 vote surprisingly has gone to Noah Bolter. So can you explain why you've given?
So Rosie and Butters, Rosie pretty much dominated the entire match really in the midfield. Butters was dominant in the second half, and through the midfield, and I gave 1 vote to Noah Bolter. He played such a selfless role in that game. He played on Aaliyah, Brent was stood next to him the entire match, did not give him an inch, and Aaliyah just played pretty poorly really. But because he had him manned up so tightly, he couldn't take many intercept marks. So it's a tactic that a lot of teams will use during the finals against Port Adelaide. And Port Adelaide, yes, they won by 30 points, but it wasn't convincing. Maybe that's a good sign that they did get the edge off them, but they didn't look convincing in my opinion, and I think they're going to get drubbed against Brisbane in the first week.
After that, we get to the Swans versus Melbourne, and the Swans, with everything to play for, weren't able to convert in front of goals throughout the afternoon, and in the last quarter, when really the Swans, everyone would have thought that Sydney would have wanted to pull away, while Melbourne had really nothing to play for in this one, as they were going to be in 4th position no matter what. Did really well to pull away from the Swans and came out pretty convincing winners, and will be probably one of the hottest teams in the top 4 going into the first round of the finals.
Yeah.
So, obviously, the bad news is for Melbourne that Jake Melksham has came back with his scans today and has been confirmed that he has done his ACL. So that's really terrible news for him, because he's been one of their best performing forwards over the second half of the season.
Yeah.
And Bailey Fritsch did not look too convincing at the end of that game. I think his foot injury may have flared up again. He did get out, did finish the rest of the game, and he did kick 5 goals?
Yeah, he kicked 5 and 3 in the last quarter. So it didn't seem to hamper him a lot, but it's just a concern
that extra week will help him.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting how that goes.
But anyway, with the votes now, we get the 3 votes to Errol Goulden, 2 votes to Bailey Fritsch, and the 1 vote to Jack Viney. So I do know that Christian Petrarca, halfway through the third quarter, really stood up, but as a whole game, you've given Viney the 1 vote over him.
Yeah, well, for the other 2, Errol Goulden had 40 disposals, 2 goals. I think that was obvious. He got the 3 votes.
He was best of field, yeah.
Bailey Fritsch kicked 5 goals and 3 in the last quarter to split the game. And Jack Viney, I thought he played a better role. I thought he played a more selfless role. He had, I think, 12 tackles. He had 25 disposals, and I thought his game was more influential
than the other guys.
It was a more defensive role, because you let Oliver and Petrarca do what they do. You just need that defensive minded player, and I think Viney's role was more pivotal.
You said it first, the first time.
In Melbourne's win.
Yeah. So with that being said, though, I will say we'll have a little bit of a debrief of the final games at the end of the podcast. But yeah, I think Sydney are in a bit of trouble, especially going up against Carlton in the first week of the finals. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And the final game, which was probably the game set up as the game of the round if the Bulldogs were able to win, which was Carlton versus the Giants. And halfway at quarter time, I thought the Giants may well have just let themselves go there. The moment got to them too much.
Yeah.
Carlton looked like they were just going to run all over them. Charlie Curnow was all up and about. He just won the Coleman medal, and it looked like it was going to be a day for Carlton to just knock one team out of the finals, which happened to them last year. Thought they'd get a little bit of a revenge. But GWS really stood up and took it to Carlton, and it does show that Carlton can be beaten.
Yeah.
And one thing that did rear its little ugly head was Carlton's entries into the forward 50 was woeful at times in this one, which really hampered them in the first half of the season, which was bomb it on Charlie Curnow's head and make him fight for it.
Well, yeah, I think it just showed that when the chips are down and they need something to happen, they go back to their old game style. Bomb it long to Charlie and hopefully he takes a contested mark.
Yeah, and it looks like... And I think one thing as well that was mentioned, I think, in the broadcast, but also when I was streaming as well, is this final series, they're not going to be going up against West Coast and, the really crappy defences of the competition. Yeah. They're going to be going up against the best of the best. And when you're going up against these really good sides, they're not going to allow you to take easy marks inside the forward 50.
Yeah.
You have to find other avenues to goal, and this is what's going to be Carlton's downfall if they don't find some way to fix that up in the next couple of weeks. Now, GWS did everything they could. They did really well to win this game, and we gave the votes. I actually did watch this one, so I did give the votes for it. Stephen Cornelio got my 3 votes, 2 votes to Toby Green, and 1 vote to Tom Green. Now, Stephen Cornelio was massive in this game. I will say that. He was really good in the midfield. Was really good like when the chips were down in that second quarter as well, when it got the Giants back into the game. He kicked a couple of really important goals for the Giants, and was just, I think, the best player on the ground and really helped the Giants get over the line here. Toby Green, with his 4 goals, was massive as well and definitely helped them in that last quarter just pull away. And in the first half as well, he kicked 3 goals. And Tom Green, I think, was just good all afternoon. And I think they're going to be a pretty hard team to beat, the Giants, in the finals, especially in that first week, because it's interesting because St Kilda may well not look like the most informed team, but they have, I think, won 5 of the past 6 games. And I know a couple of those earlier ones were, 4 of the past 6 games. And I know a couple of those games earlier in that little period were against the bottom teams. But they have beaten a couple of good opposition lineups in the past month or so. And they did perform pretty well against Brisbane. So it will be a very interesting game, that one. I think that one's probably the 50-50 out of all the games, probably. Oh, actually, there probably are a few, but I think it's...
I think they're all 50-50 besides the Port Brisbane game, I think.
We will see about that. But what we wanted to do before talking about the finals games at the end of the season, for the first round of the finals, we will be doing a full tips and stuff next week. But I just wanted to go quickly